सगळ्यांचं नवापूर डॉक्टर असोसिएशनतर्फे सगळ्यांचं आजच्या सेमीला स्वागत करतोय. आजचा टॉपिक आहे सेमी ऑन क्रिटिकल केअर. आज आपल्या इथं बारडोलीचे डॉक्टर ज्योतिष पटेल MD पीडियाट्रिशियन ते स्वतः आलेले. आपण त्यांचं स्वागत करूया. डॉक्टर संदीप चौधरींना विनंती करतो की डॉक्टर ज्योतिष पटेल यांचं स्वागत करावं. धन्यवाद. तसेच त्यांच्याबरोबर डॉक्टर मार्विक पटेल MD मेडिसिन त्यांचं स्वागत डॉक्टर जाकीर शेख करतील. तसेच अजून एक गेस्ट आहे डॉक्टर प्रतीक देसाई ऑर्थोपेडिक अँड जॉईंट रिप्लेसमेंट सर्जन. त्यांचं स्वागत डॉक्टर सुरेश देसाई करतील. धन्यवाद. तर आपण कार्यक्रमाला सुरुवातच करून टाकू. पहिलं लेक्चर होईल डॉक्टर ज्योतिष पटलांचं MD पीडियाट्रिक सिकल सेल एक्सपर्ट. सब्जेक्ट आहे क्रिटिकल केअर मॅनेजमेंट इन सिकल सेल. तर मी सरांना विनंती करतोय आपण आपलं योग्य मार्गदर्शन करावं. सर.
नवापुर मेडिकल एसोसिएशन के प्रेसिडेंट एंड सेक्रेटरी and doctors from Nawapur Medical Association. नवापुर की भूमि गुजरात और महाराष्ट्र की एडजॉइनिंग भूमि है. So many times we pass through this road, and many times it has so happened that we pass through Maharashtra and Gujarat twice. That is what I remember. I had been to Umja Gaon long back. You know, it is on the left side of the Uncle Kua. That time we went there to screen Umja village a couple of years ago, and that time we saw that it's a very typical geography of Maharashtra and Gujarat. Happy to be here. In a given 30 minutes time, what I'll do is take you to a case scenario and try to bring out some of the clinical relevant issues which are there in our day-to-day practice. We know for sure that sickle cell hemoglobinopathy is quite common in our region. A disease affecting hemoglobin, a congenital one, inherited from parents. If a child inherits one abnormal hemoglobin, child is known as sickle cell trait, and if inherits abnormal sickle hemoglobin gene from both the parents, then child is sickle cell disease. For sickle cell trait individual, possibly there is no treatment which is required. So essentially, for sickle cell trait, there is hardly anything to say except that a person who is sickle cell trait would require a kind of premarital counseling, diagnosis during pregnancy as far as fetus is concerned. Now, whatever we are going to talk today in next 20, 25 or 30 minutes time is obviously related to sickle cell disease. I am going to discuss a case. 14 years old male child came in emergency with cough, cold and fever of just one day in one of the hospital. Early morning at 3 o'clock, child had the complaint of giddiness and they thought that child is becoming critically ill. Brought to our hospital with a fever of 103 degree Fahrenheit, 176 pulse rate, 36 RR, 130 by 70 blood pressure, with 5 liters oxygen, 98% was the oxygen saturation. Child was hypoxic. Significant pallor was there was a jaundice, abdomen was having 10 centimeter of spleen, 3 centimeter of hepatomegaly non-tender, bilateral crepitations and bronchi. Child had tachycardia and CNS-wise there were no signs of major irritation. At this point of time, what are my priorities? Child is with me. What I should be doing? Quick assessment of the criticality. What I need to know is what is the level of hemoglobin in next 10 minutes. Judge the hydration status of the patient looking at inferior vena cava collapse and echocardiography. Get bedside X-ray done immediately to decide on whether the child has got acute chest syndrome or not. And the splenomegaly is there. I need to know whether the child has got increase in the size of spleen or child has got a decrease in the size of the spleen. 10 centimeter spleen is a present spleen size, but is it larger in size than before or it is less? So these are my priorities. Look at the hemoglobin. It is 5.8 gram per cent, which is significantly low. IVC collapse only 20%, meaning thereby the child has got right-sided volume overload and the possibility of pulmonary arterial hypertension. X-ray chest was suggestive of pulmonary edema, which confirmed that IVC collapse was less and there is an evidence of acute chest syndrome here. And looking to the previous mentioned size of the spleen on record, the size of the spleen has increased. Now I would want you to focus and pay attention to this finding. Now look at the level of hemoglobin that this patient has. From record, we analyze 40 hemoglobin values, and usually his stable state hemoglobin is somewhere around 8 gram per cent. 5.8 is too low for him. If there is increase in the size of the spleen, that suggests that patient has got sequestration of the blood. It is a splenic sequestration, wherein you have a sudden increase in the size of the spleen, and there are various grades which are available. This patient had almost, beyond umbilica, so it was a very significantly enlarged spleen. When we talk about the hydration component, the clinical guidelines that we have, as we were taught in our undergraduate days, that you look at the skin turgor, You look at the tongue, whether it is dry or moist. You look at the skin texture. Now, possibly these are the criteria which are not going to be very significantly abnormal when you are talking about sickle cell crisis. And that time, it is very important that how we are going to judge on that. For that, the technology has come wherein we do evaluation of hydration by measuring the size of the inferior vena cava and the collapse of the inferior vena cava. Usually it is 50% or more when the patient is euhydrated, normal hydration status. If it is dehydrated, it is more collapsible. And if the patient has got right-sided volume overload or failure, that time it is less collapsible. So this has helped us in managing patients with sickle cell disease very significantly. If you look at this is one of the paper, not very old paper, is 2019, inferior vena cava evaluation in fluid therapy decision making in intensive care unit. Here it mentions ideally patients with acute circulatory failure should be evaluated with regard to fluid responsiveness before its administration to avoid deleterious effect. Why I am stressing on this? Because the compliance of the patient to whatever intravenous fluid or oral fluid that you give in sickle cell disease is very poor. Many times giving intravenous fluid may be really deleterious. The adequacy of resuscitation should be based on clinical judgment considering the risk of fluid overload versus the potential benefit of fluid therapy, keeping in mind that not all responders need fluid administration. Let me tell you, roughly in our intensive care unit, sickle cell disease patients, 50% of them they receive diuretic therapy. This is contrary to whatever we have been taught during our undergraduate and postgraduate days. The message that I want to give is it is very important to judge hydration status very meticulously. Going further, that why this child had fever, why giddiness, why headache, and why hypoxia, and why splenomegaly, of course. I am trying to focus on this why fever. Is it viral? Is it bacterial? Is it malarial? Or it is something else? To get this answer, I need to do CBC, MP, absolute neutrophilia is there or not, look at the CRP, look at the procalcitonin. These are the biomarkers which are available to us, blood culture and the X-ray chest. Child came on 14.8 and look at the hemoglobin 5.8 with the WBC count 8.76, 8,760 which is normal. But look at the neutrophil count, it is 83%, lymphocyte is 10%, platelets are little low, right? Even on the subsequent it is little low. So here is a patient who has a normal total count, has got low hemoglobin, has got neutrophilia, and patient has got little low platelets. CRP is little elevated. The procalcitonin was normal, myelopericytes were not seen, dengue was negative, chest X-ray was showing pulmonary edema, USG abdomen was having significant splenomegaly, which was otherwise also there. But why we did it? Just to find out whether there is a splenic infarct, there is a splenic abscess, whether there is splenitis, right? These are the things that we wanted to find out. And of course, it was a tender spleen. Now, if you look at the prothrombin time, it was okay, INR was normal, APTT was normal. Here, we did blood culture and sensitivity. We have got our full-fledged microbiology department with us, and wherein we get all patients screened with blood culture, and it was not showing any growth. We did even tropine and anti-proBNP, and that was also normal. So having done all these things, now it is a question of managing these patients further. This patient had very high grade fever, as we know, so paracetamol always was given. Oxygen was given to this patient with a possibility of putting this patient on BiPAP, SOS. Intravenous fluid, it was restricted. We started with tigecycline. We added falcigo. Somebody would come up and ask me that your malarial parasite was negative and still you are giving falcigo to this patient. I am justified in giving this because malaria is difficult to pick up in a patient of sickle cell disease, especially in crisis, because of the very, very low parasitemia. So it is wiser to give anti-malarial agents to this patient and cover this patient up, especially during the critical phase. Patient was also given deriphyllin, paracetamol was given, blood transfusion was given, and one blood unit, the raised hemoglobin to 9.2. The question is why, somebody would ask me and I'll answer it. Central line was put in, Foley's catheter was put in. We gave Lasix to this patient. We had given hydrocortisone. Patient was advised to go for do spirometry. Nebulizer was given. And as I mentioned that this patient had enlarged spleen USG wise, and CT brain was normal. Especially this patient had complaint of giddiness, one complaint, which can be evidence of intracranial hemorrhage. So we did it. So here this patient had tachycardia, tachypnea, and patient had volume overload. So this was the management on day 1. What we did on day 2. Look at the fever, it has gone down. The tachycardia was persistent. The respiratory rate was little high. The blood pressure was little more for a child of 14 years of age. So we almost continued with the same line of the management, and look at the fluid balance. The patient was kept on negative side, and look at the collapsibility, right? It was less than 50% collapsible. Going further on day 3, the temperature had come down, the pulse rate was little on the higher side, the respiratory rate was settling down, the BP was again little on the higher side, and we continued with the same management, and here we got 50% collapsible IVC, meaning thereby at least patient was coming out from that phase. Day 4, the challenge was a rising level of the hemoglobin. Look at this hemoglobin level. On 14 it was 5.8, we give 1 PCV. Subsequently he had 10.3, 9.4, 11.6, 11.9. The patient had constantly rising hemoglobin without blood transfusion. That was the challenge. We need to stabilize this patient, because this is the patient who is likely to go in for severity of acute chest syndrome, may die any time. So we were very watchful as far as this aspect was concerned. What we did, in spite of child being negative and the IVC collapse was less than 50%, we had withdrawn 200 ml of blood. We did phlebotomy, because the higher the level of hemoglobin, more the viscosity, the patient may end up with other complications also. So we removed blood, right? And we wanted to bring it down. Then also, you look at this, 11.9, it came to 10.9. Look at this. Challenge again here is still there is a rising hemoglobin. It was 12.7, which was really dangerous, and it was disturbing also. The child had tender spleen. The child had huge spleen. The child had evidence of hypersplenism. This was the time that we wanted to decide that what to do. Should we continue with the phlebotomy again and again? Or it is the spleen which is culprit. Whatever blood which was sequestered by the spleen is trying to push it again into the circulation. and that is why the child has got rising level of the hemoglobin. So we had a discussion with surgeon. I said that this patient otherwise was also advised splenectomy. It's a time now to decide. Otherwise we are going to lose this child. And surgeon agreed. He said, I would operate with consent of death on table. We were in a puzzle how to convey this to the parents, all the parents, and explain why it is required, why it is needed. And in fact, he also got convinced. We had another patient who was splenectomy. We said that he is fine, we have to take risk. Ultimately, it is in the benefit of the child. And we took a decision of going for splenectomy. What were the pre-operative notes? Right in the morning, at 7:30 a.m., there was no fever, no pain, no breathlessness. The pulse rate was high, blood pressure was 120/80, RR was 19, oxygen saturation was 98. Look at this. What was the size of the spleen? It was 10 centimeters. And what is the size of the spleen today? It is 1 centimeter. Somebody would come and argue me that, sir, this patient has got a 1 centimeter spleen, and why you want to go for splenectomy in this patient? But we decided to go for it because it was in interest of the patient, and we did it. The hemoglobin level was 10.4 gram per cent, and we advised anesthetists to keep hemoglobin 10 gram per cent. Do not overtransfuse this patient. It was done under general anesthesia, and splenectomy was done very well. We removed the spleen. It was a huge spleen, difficult to believe. Sonographically, it was the size which was shown, right? When we took it out, it was a very huge spleen, weighing more than 1 kg. And I tell you, post-operatively, this patient did very well. We kept negative. The IVC was very well collapsible, and the patient was getting better. Look at the spleen. Can you imagine? This was the time when father said, it's good that we removed it. But before surgery, he was also in dilemma, and we were also in dilemma. This spleen was weighing 1 kg, and it was not corresponding to the sonographic finding. So message what I want to give is, never rely on sonography too much. Possibly you may be misguided also. Going further, that during the post-operative phase, we were watchful about the acute chest syndrome, because this is the period wherein the child is going to breathe shallow. And when child is going to breathe shallow, there are chances that patient will have pneumonia, which can create problem. Although we were giving them spirometry and everything, we were watchful as far as acute chest syndrome is concerned. And look at here. The oxygen saturation had started little falling. We know for sure in COVID that whatever baseline oxygen saturation that you have, if there is a 3% difference, it is to be labeled as a case of hypoxia. And this patient definitely had falling oxygen saturation. So we were watchful. We were giving oxygen therapy to him, and we were trying to maintain it. This is the time when we had to hold Lasix. Patient was put on full diet, but still we were little concerned about the oxygen dependency of this patient. Third day, patient had fever. Again, that it was a challenge. The patient is febrile and now has got fever again. And we were just trying to evaluate him again. Did PCT, did CRP, everything. And to our surprise, we were not getting the answer to it. For us, the challenge was Patient had little fever, patient had occasional cough, and patient had little dependency on the oxygen saturation to maintain the normal level of oxygen. So, we did X-ray test again, which did not tell us much. We did HRCT, and this was the HRCT. Look at the pneumonic patch, which was not picked up in the routine X-ray test. When we saw this, a thought process started in our mind. We had a discussion with the surgeon. We have a team of doctors. Dr. Marmix looks after the ICU care. I look after the clinical side and the pediatric side. Surgeon look after his own side. So likewise, we had a discussion that this is the patient who is a case of pyrexia, acute chest syndrome, acute sequestration crisis, undergone surgery, and we are not able to get the clue. Which antibiotic we should be starting? Tigecycline we have already given. Patient was otherwise okay. That patient was shifted to ward, patient was eating normally, but there was little hypoxia and little tachypnea, which we were not happy, and a fever came up. We thought of giving him linezolid. And you won't believe that when we gave him, within next 24 hours, he became afebrile. He was off oxygen therapy, and patient was fine. So possibly we answered all these questions by now, that giddiness was not because of intracranial hemorrhage, headache was not because of intracranial hemorrhage, the hypoxia we could find out the cause, and why there was a splenomegaly. The message here is there is a definitive role of restricted IV fluid. Please be careful. Many times there is a problem, because we understand in a periphery we are not able to have IVC collapse to be seen in every patient, or any patient for that matter. So what are the criteria that how we should be selecting fluid, which fluid should be given, how much should be given? I think it is a big challenge as far as sickle cell disease patient is concerned. I would be happier to put these patients on oral fluids unless and until it is indicated. If at all a patient is to be given intravenous fluids, it should be restricted. My message here is please do not infuse normal saline in these patients. Truly speaking, they are not dehydrated as we think. There is no much of a hypocynuria in our patients. These patients are fine as far as hydration is concerned. Okay. And be ready with the BiPAP support whenever it is required, and use of diuretic therapy. I think there is a definitive role of ICU care in a patient of sickle cell crisis. A lot of things are required. And when we monitor them, initial 48 hours, 72 hours, I think so many things are manageable. And it's a teamwork, in fact, right? The physician is there, pediatrician is there, intensivist is there, surgeon is there, right? So it is a teamwork, and that makes a lot of sense. This case will be discussed by Marmik. This patient is there in ICU at the moment. Few pictures, rapid fire. Tamanna did splenectomy in 2011. Doesn't take folic acid tablet. Doesn't take hydroxyurea. Doesn't take any medicine for sickle cell. She is a case of sickle cell disease. 11 years now, she is a 12th science student. A patient with spinal abnormality unrelated to sickle cell hemoglobinopathy. ICU here, even a younger babies, we have to think about diagnostic possibility of sickle cell disease. They requires again utmost care. My first case of sickle cell disease, this was in Ukai, I came to Ukai in 85 as a postgraduate student. And that time we had a camp from Baroda Medical College. And this was my first case at that time. Very, very difficult to believe that father and mother working and both son. A case of sickle cell disease, again a case of sickle cell disease, right? Unfortunately, mother had breast cancer, she recovered. Both are sickle cell disease. He had so many admissions 3-4 years ago. They came, they cried, sir, what to do? And all of a sudden, this patient was lost to follow-up. Came after 1 year. He said, sir, I am pursuing my first MBBS in BJ Medical College, Ahmedabad. See how the things are going, The patient who was, ill, every month patient was getting admitted, getting so many treatment. The parents were disheartened, right? And a fine day morning, he comes up, sir, I am studying in first MBBS, right? I have got 5 students who are sickle cell disease, and they are in first, second, third MBBS, It's there, right? What a message I want to give is inspire them, give them a positive mind. They can study it, they can enjoy a good life. A smile on the face, a lady from Mumbai, right? Got married to a Kathiawadi, right, in Cambridge, right? And sickle cell disease. We had 50 deliveries of sickle cell disease. Neha, she is a daughter-in-law, right? And she look after this department, she is a gynecologist. 50 deliveries of sickle cell disease, no mortality. Child well, mother well, all safe deliveries, no problem. Again, another story. Mother with sickle cell disease, son had leukemia when he was 5 years of age. I diagnosed it. He stays near KPP and he recovered from leukemia. She is a lady with sickle cell disease, was coming with the husband. All of a sudden she came and said, sir, मेरे husband ने खुदकुशी कर ली. He committed suicide, right? And this lady came after a couple of years and said, sir, I want to give one good news to you. I said, what it is? Son who had leukemia, he recovered, you know it. And today, he is studying in first MBBS in Surendranagar Medical College. At present, he is in second MBBS. She lost husband, but she did not lose hope. She is a working lady with diamond factory in Surat. Right. So, हम हमारा दुख देख रहे हैं कि हम कितने दुखी हैं इस जमाने में. मेरे हिसाब से दुनिया कितनी दुखी है आप देखिए. And what kind of fighting spirit they have is tremendous. Again, a lady with a smiling face, sickle cell disease, having a baby delivered. Again, another, she had bad DVT, fortunately survived and went home. Mother had a sickle cell disease, he also had a sickle cell disease. This is my old hospital in which this photograph was taken. One day, he lost hope, she was unconscious, she was put a rice tube, and he said, I have got one tablet with me, which was prescribed by Dr. Jyotish Patel a few years ago. Let me dissolve it and give it through RT, rice tube. He gave it, right? And brought mother to our surprise. She survived and went home. This was one of the conference where I had opportunity to present, talk, and conduct a session on sickle cell disease. This was in Nagpur, and this is again a case of headache, was in civil hospital, came to our hospital, did immediately CT, and this patient had got extradural hematoma. Operated in just 2 hours time in our own hospital, right? We did CT, we have got in-house CT with us, right? We did CT, 2 hours he was operated and he survived, he went home. Friends, the last thing that I want to tell you is every patient of sickle cell disease is different. Every time he comes to our consulting room, he is different. There are no ready-made guidelines for the patient. The guideline is only one, that your wisdom, your judgment is going to decide about the fate of this patient. And I think that is why I am saying sickle is not simple. I say to all cardiologists that you have a knowledge of dealing with three vessels of the heart. As a sickle cell expert, we manage tons with so many complications. I think this is the most complex disease. Thank you so much for patient listening.
थँक्यू सर. आता दुसरं लेक्चर आहे डॉक्टर मार्मिक पटेल. त्यांच्याबद्दल थोडं सांगतो. डॉक्टर मार्मिक पटेल, MD इंटरनल मेडिसिन प्लस फेलो इन इंडोक्रायनॉलॉजी, आणि सध्या ते चीफ फिजिशियन अँड इंटेन्सिव्ह इन शिशुद्वी हॉस्पिटल मल्टी हॉस्पिटलला आहेत. ते आज ते आपल्याला त्यांचं स्पेशलायझेशन आहे क्रिटिकल केअर सिकल सेल डिसीज. मी त्यांना विनंती करतो की ते आता आपल्याला मार्गदर्शन करतील.
Thank you. Good evening, my seniors and doctor friends. I think the most discussed thing and topic in the world right now is Omicron. We all have witnessed the second wave, the bed crisis, the oxygen crisis. I have got many calls from general practitioners, from referring physicians to get admitted their patients. But there was, I think, limited amount of beds which we all have witnessed. We all have lost many our colleagues, our patients, family members. So I think this is the topic which has already been developed or discussed. It is still research is going on, and more I think we must help them also. So even a single symptom we witness, we must tell them, we must tell government, so we can go deeper into that and we can manage it better. So what is Omicron? First reported on 24 November 2021 in South Africa by Dr. Angelique Coetzee. Now, one patient came to her and he had normal viral fever. He had sore throat, he had malaise, he had runny nose. We must think that this is common cold and we treat like that. On follow-up, patient came with severe fatigue, which was very much unusual, and she looked at it curiously. She thought, I must go for RT-PCR. She did it and she got the result positive. You all know there are three genes. One is N, that is nucleocapsid, one spike protein, and the envelope. In that report, the S gene came negative, which was surprising. So, see, this was the, I think we must take a mild symptom, fatigue. हम लोग बोल देते हैं ओके ठीक है, ठीक हो जाएगा, 2-3 दिन राह देख लीजिए, ठीक हो जाएगा. She took it to WHO. She reported it. WHO did gene sequencing, and on 26th of November, they designated the variant B1.1 529 as a variant of concern and named it as Omicron. On 9th December, the Omicron variant has been confirmed in 63 countries. It has high number of mutations, including 26 to 32 in the spike protein, which is S protein, some of which are concerning and may be associated with higher transmission. So, right now, the three main questions are there with all of us. First, transmission. Second, what is the severity of the disease? And third, efficacy of vaccine. Right? So look at the transmission. Omicron has growth advantage over Delta variant. It is spreading more faster in compared to Delta due to mutations. The most important thing, people who had COVID-19 infection in the past can also be reinfected easily with the Omicron. Still, it needs more study and research. Looking at the severity of disease, there are so limited data is available as of now. But so far, whatever data is there, it is saying the sufferers of Omicron have a milder form of disease. Fever, cough, sore throat, body ache, headache, very important, fatigue. So, we are seeing these patients routinely in our OPD. We treat them as a common viral fever, but if your patient is saying I am having fatigue, which is unusual, and I never had before, please go for RT-PCR. Another very important symptom, there is no loss of taste and smell, which was very much common in the Delta variant. And we used to say directly, if patient is saying, I am having no loss of smell and taste, we were saying this is COVID, right? And on the basis of that, we were treating them, right? But we all must keep in mind that all variants of COVID-19 can cause severe disease or death. So prevention is always better. These are the symptoms we have discussed. Diagnosis. So only in previous Delta variant, we had two modalities. One, swab test, whether we go for RT-PCR or rapid antigen test, and another is high-resolution CT scan. In Omicron, there are no data or less data available for rapid antigen tests. Some of them are still valid in the foreign countries, not in India. Evidence suggests that Omicron variant causes deletion in the S gene. So, when we do the PCR test, right, it does not detect the S gene. That's why they mark it is as a negative in the report. And if the S gene is not detected, we must suspect that it can be Omicron. We must report, and further gene analysis is to be done for confirmation. Treatment, symptomatic treatment, first of all, we must give anti-cold, antipyretic. In moderate and severe cases, obviously, remdesivir is a Ramban Ilaj, we must say. Corticosteroids, dexamethasone, methylpred. Interleukin-6 inhibitors, tocilizumab, bevamizumab. I am not much happy with this tocilizumab.
I have treated more than 400 indoor cases. I have never used this tocilizumab in fear of developing secondary sepsis. And I have witnessed many cases who have developed secondary sepsis and when it is shock and we have lost them. I think this is the new to you. This must be new to you, the protease inhibitor ulinastatin. There are many articles available. When the second wave started, I went through all the guidelines and possible treatments through net and related articles, which I got this ulinastatin, which is protease inhibitor. And I got that if you use this molecule with high dose of steroid, again with high dose of steroid, not just the protease inhibitor, which it will act as an anti-inflammatory, and it has got tremendous result in developing ARDS or developed ARDS. Obviously, anticoagulant must be given to each and every patient. We all know early diagnosis and treatment always helps in rapid recovery. Vaccine, effective, yes or no? No evidence till now in India. Many of you have got Covaxin, many of you got Covishield. But there is still debate going on. Mutation may cause decreased efficacy of the vaccine, but it is still in dilemma. Vaccination may decrease the severity of disease, so everyone must get vaccinated. Still no clear guideline for the booster dose. However, the Pfizer, right, they have approved the booster dose, and they are telling that patients whosoever got this booster dose will develop immunity against in 1 month of time, right? So only the Pfizer has approved it. Prevention, well-fitting mask, physical distancing, ventilation of indoor space, crowd avoidance, and frequent hand washing. If we will save ourselves, we will be able to save patients because they are going to come to us only. So we need to do each and every of this to save ourselves first. The take-home message is clinical severity of Omicron remains uncertain, so one must look it as a challenge, and if you are seeing any symptom other than the mentioned here, you must report it to government. But increased transmission with similar or even lower severity than Delta, it can affect the healthcare system and lead to significant morbidity. We must educate and motivate our patients and family members to prevent it. We must take all preventive measures. So far, only one case reported dead by Boris Johnson in the world. Our small move can save the world. We must take it seriously, right? Let's discuss out some few interesting cases of our ICU. We'll go in brief, not in detail. This was a picture shown by Dr. Jyotish sir. This young male presented to us with pain in joints, admitted. He was given ketorolac as analgesic, O2 support. In the midnight, patient developed little drowsiness. Then, after just 10-15 minutes, he had an episode of convulsion. Immediately, we did CT brain, and it was showing intracranial bleed, which is one of the very dangerous complications of sickle cell disease. We operated this case within 1.5 hours of the time, and it's not clear here, but this is the bleed, and it has been cleared here. So this patient is under treatment at present in the ICU, and he has still developed another bleed. This was on the right parietal side. He has another bleed on left parietal side. He is vitally stable as of now. This was one of my favorite patients, young female. She came bodily to one of gynecologists for dilatation and curettage, and she developed sudden breathlessness during the OT. She was a case of perioperative dilated cardiomyopathy. You can see the heart, dilated LA, LV, RA, RV. She managed in our ICU, and she went home. She is fine, happy at present. 61-year female. Look at the X-ray. This was the starting of second wave. Everyone must have think of COVID only. I admitted her and did her echo, which was suggestive of severe MR. This was the case not of COVID but heart failure. First time diagnosed at the age of 61 with severe MR. Cause for MR could be myocardial infarction. Patient advised for mitral valve replacement post stabilization, which was done at Surat. At present, living normal life. 54-year male, a case of COVID-19 with acute respiratory distress syndrome. You can see the lung involvement, almost 96%. Discharged after 30 days of treatment, walking home without oxygen. He is again very happy patient of mine. Thank you for the patient listening, but I want we all must get alert for the upcoming Omicron. We don't know what severity it will have, but we must be ready. So like in the previous wave, we were not enough ready to fight it out. Let's prepare ourselves to fight it out more sincerely and methodically. Thank you so much.
त्यानंतर मी या ठिकाणी डॉक्टर प्रतीकसिंह देसाई यांना त्यांच्या ऑर्थोपेडिक अँड जॉईंट रिप्लेसमेंट सर्जन ते शिशुदेव हॉस्पिटलला सेवा देत आहेत. त्यांना मी विनंती करतो की त्यांच्या विषयासंदर्भित त्यांनी डॉक्टर असोसिएशनसमोर माहिती मांडावी.
Good evening, friends. Myself, Dr. Pratik Desai, consultant orthopedic. Today, I will discuss about experience and outcome of polytrauma cases managed at Sisudeep Hospital. We have dedicated 24/7 trauma and emergency department. All patient beds in our emergency department are X-ray compatible. All beds have individual multi-para monitor, central oxygen supply, central suction supply, dedicated ventilator and defibrillator machine for emergency department, single dome operation light so that all kind of emergency procedure like intubation of patient, stitches of open wound and CLW, immobilization of fracture with cast and splint can be done in emergency department only. We have 24/7 running X-ray unit, CT scan unit, pharmacy and laboratory. We have also portable X-ray facilities for the patient of polytrauma, so no need to shift patient anywhere. X-ray can be done at bedside only. We have advanced modular operation theater with horizontal as well as vertical laminar airflow system. We have modern X-ray compatible fully motorized operation table with all orthopedic and neuro attachment. For minimal invasive surgery, we have facility of CM machine. We have adjustable double dome light, anesthesia workstation, monopolar as well as bipolar diathermy, suction machine. We have plasma autoclave machine, which ensure us safest autoclaving. And for the post-operative management of patient, we have backup of surgical ICU. We have facilities for total knee joint replacement, total hip joint replacement, management of trauma, open injury, crush, machine injury case, management of roadside accident, management of polytrauma, multiple fracture, head injury, blunt abdominal injury, revision surgery for failed case, non-union of fracture, management of pediatric trauma and fracture, intra-articular injection for pain management, close reduction and cast under IITV image without surgery. Now, talking about first case, 40-year male patient, known case of road traffic accident with head injury, facial injury, right side clavicle fracture, right side proximal tibia fracture. Patient came in emergency at around 11 p.m. with the alleged history of motor coalization. On examination, patient is drowsy, not responding to verbal command. On examination, patient is drowsy, not responding to verbal command. Nasal, oral bleeding were present. Multiple bruise over face, edema, swelling over right knee and right shoulder. On examining her his vitals, pulse was very feeble, not recordable. BP not recordable. SpO2 80% on room air, per abdominal soft, pupil reacting to light. A team of multiple doctor, physician, surgeon, orthopedic surgeon working simultaneously on this patient. In emergency department, decision of intubation was taken and intubation was done immediately in emergency. Secured IV line taken, IV fluid, IV antibiotics, injection Levera was given, catheterization was done, fracture immobilization done with splint. Again, vitals checked, we able to get pulse 90 per minute, BP 100 by 60 per 60 mmHg, SpO2 98 on ventilatory support. After stabilizing the patient, CT brain and CT phase was done, X-rays of limb taken, all blood investigations done. Within 2 hours, a team of neurosurgeon and plastic surgeon operated on him. Debridement, elevation of left frontal bone, fracture segment, reposition of frontal bone, tracheostomy was done by neurosurgeon, and open reduction internal fixation of mandible fracture, IMF for fracture bilateral maxilla, nasal bone reduction with padding done by plastic surgeon. Post-operatively, patient shifted to surgical ICU for monitoring. After 2 days, when patient was stable with clearance from the neurosurgical side, open reduction and internal fixation with plating performed for proximal tibia fracture. On 10th day of admission, tracheostomy was removed, and on 16th day, patient discharged to home with stable vitals. This is the clinical picture of the patient. Bilateral maxilla mandible fracture, shattered frontal bone fracture. This is the post-operative X-ray of proximal tibia fracture treated with bicolumn plate. Important thing is early treatment. Why we get successful result in this patient? The main is early treatment. Patient presented to us within 2 hours of the road traffic accident. Within a very short period of time, less than 50 to 20 minute period of time, emergency intubation, IV line, catheter, immobilization, everything was done. Availability of dedicated team of multiple doctors was there. If we don't have team of multiple doctors and only one consultant is treating this patient, then we can't manage it. Facility of CT scan, well-equipped operation theater, all these things lead to successful outcome for that patient. Second case, again 20-year male patient, known case of RTA with comminuted shaft femur fracture, right side, same side shaft tibia fracture and PCL avulsion fracture, same side. Came in emergency at around 7 p.m. with the complaint of pain over right side of the lower limb and patient was in hypovolemic shock. On examination, patient was conscious. His vital is pulse 100 per minute, blood pressure 100 by 60, SpO2 98% on room air. Right lower limb was shortened and externally rotated. Distal pulse were present, so fortunately he has no vascular injury. This is his clinical picture showing externally rotated and shortened right lower limb. Again in emergency, secure IV line taken, IV fluid, IV antibiotics with PCV given, and after correcting the hypovolemic shock, patient taken for emergency surgery. Wound debridement, ligation of active bleeder and femur fracture fixation done with interlocking femur nail. Patient shifted to surgical ICU, and after 2 days, when patient is fit for another second surgery, in second sitting, closed reduction and tibia nailing done for shaft tibia fracture, and open reduction and CC screw fixation was done for PCL avulsion fracture. This is the pre-operative clinical and post-operative clinical picture of the same patient. The pre-operative X-rays and post-operative X-rays of the same patient. This is the proximal femur fracture fragment which is pop up out of the patient's skin at this level. A third case, 28-year male patient, known case of RTA, with right frontal and left frontal extradural hemorrhage with multiple facial fracture. Patient came in emergency department at around 11 a.m. with the history of blood in vomiting, nasal bleeding, history of loss of consciousness, history of convulsion. On examination, patient sensation is altered. Right pupil 4 mm sluggish reacting to light, left pupil 3 mm reacting to light, temperature was normal, pulse 100 per minute, respiratory rate regular, blood pressure was 150 by 100, SpO2 98%, his PCS was E2V3M5, swelling over both eye, over forehead, multiple abrasions over right knee and the thigh. In emergency, after securing patient's airway, breathing and circulation, CT brain and face was done. On CT brain, we found right frontal and left frontal extradural hemorrhage with multiple facial fractures. Emergency operation was planned, temporal craniotomy with elevation of depressed skull segment with evacuation of extradural hematoma done by the neurosurgeon under general anesthesia. Post-surgery patient was shifted in ICU. All facial injury treated conservatively. and after 15 days, patient discharged with the stable vital at home. These are the post-surgical picture of the patient. Take-home message. For the effective management and better outcome of the polytrauma case, early treatment is a key for the success. Availability of dedicated team of multiple doctors, facility for X-ray, CT scan, laboratory, pharmacy, well-equipped operation theater, ICU with availability of physician, trained nursing and OT staff, availability of nearby blood bank. These are all very much necessary for effective management of patient. If we did not receive patient in proper time, कई बार ऐसा होता है कि पेशेंट RTA हुआ, CHC पर गया, वहाँ पे प्राइमरी मैनेज हुआ, उन्होंने बोला आगे जाओ, कोई और अस्पताल में गया, वहाँ पे मैनेज हुआ, बोला आगे जाओ, तो आते आते ऐसा हो जाता है कि वो क्रिटिकल टाइम निकल जाता है, फिर कुछ नहीं कर पाते। मान लो सेकंड सिनेरियो कि पेशेंट RTA के 1 घंटे में, आधे घंटे में आपके पास आ गया, लेकिन आपके पास डेडिकेटेड टीम अवेलेबल नहीं हो तो क्या करोगे आप? सिर्फ फिजिशियन है, सिर्फ ऑर्थोपेडिक सर्जन है, सिर्फ एक डॉक्टर है, तो आपको भी उस वैसा ही करना पड़ेगा कि आगे जाओ। मान लो आपके पास दोनों चीज़ है, अगर CT स्कैन, प्रॉपर लेबोरेटरी की फैसिलिटी नहीं है तो भी क्या करोगे? हेड इंजरी है, CT स्कैन नहीं हो पाएगा तो आप पेशेंट को मैनेज ही नहीं कर पाओगे। ये सब है तो आपके पास एक अच्छा ऑपरेशन थिएटर होना चाहिए कि जहाँ पे सारी फैसिलिटीज़ हो। पोस्ट ऑपरेटिव मैनेजमेंट के लिए प्रॉपर ICU बैकअप होना चाहिए। इन सब के साथ अच्छे स्टाफ, नर्स, polytrauma patients are came with they are always in hypovolemic shock. So नज़दीक या अस्पताल में ब्लड बैंक हो तो वो अच्छे से ये सब चीज़ें हो तो आप अच्छे से पेशेंट को मैनेज कर सकते हो। एक भी चीज़ इसमें से नहीं हो तो फिर ऐसा होता है कि आपको रिस्पॉन्स बराबर नहीं मिला। थैंक यू।